Let us shatter an illusion you cling to with desperate faith, your tireless effort, your meticulous planning, your straining human will. These are not the source of true wealth. They are the noise that drowns out the only voice that can whisper the secret of infinite supply. If I were to begin again with the clarity I now possess, I would not rush toward a goal. I would sit in profound silence. I would not affirm beggarly prayers, but I would utter a single living truth until the universe had no choice but to mirror it in my experience, until the appearance of $1 million became a natural, effortless symbol of the inner reality established. You have been taught to seek the effect. I am here to direct you to the cause. You have been conditioned to build from the outside in. We shall work from the inside out, where the only genuine creative power resides. What you will discover here is not a method for accumulation, but a path of revelation, where you stop being a seeker of supply and become the very embodiment of it. This is not about getting, but about knowing, and in that knowing, all forms arrange themselves accordingly. If this truth stirs something within you, recognize that stirring is a sacred impulse. Honor it by sealing this communion. Subscribe to this channel as an act of consecration, declaring your readiness for the inner journey. And in the comments, speak the number 7 Joie, the symbol of completion and spiritual fulfillment, as your silent vow to move beyond the visible into the realm of pure cause. Let us understand this first principle not as a theory, but as the most practical turning point you will ever make. You believe your financial reality is shaped by the markets, by your job, by the economy, by your relentless striving. This is the great human assumption, and it is the very prison that keeps you straining at the wheel of circumstance, looking for the next opportunity, the next break, the next external sign. I tell you, the moment you turn your gaze from the outside world of effect to the inner kingdom of cause, that is the moment the bars begin to dissolve. Your supply does not originate in a bank account, a client, or a stock. It originates in consciousness itself. It flows from the infinite, impersonal substance of spirit, which is the only true capital in this universe. Your salary, your investments, your business revenue, these are merely the forms this substance takes as it passes through your life. To focus on the form is to worship the shadow and ignore the light casting it. Think of your daily life. You awake with a mental list of lacks. The bill that is due, the goal not yet met, the comparison with another success. Your entire day then becomes a nervous reaction to that feeling of lack. You hustle from a place of anxiety. You negotiate from a place of need. You strategize from a place of limitation. You are like a man in a room trying to rearrange the furniture to create more air, all the while unaware that the window behind him is shut. He spends his energy moving chairs and tables, growing more exhausted and breathless, never realizing the simple, pivotal act is to turn and open the window to the boundless sky. Your striving is the rearrangement of furniture. The inner listening, the quiet turning within to the source of infinite spiritual substance is the opening of the window. This is not passive. It is the most active thing you can do, for it changes the nature of all your subsequent action. When you sit in the morning, do not sit to beg a distant God for a check. Sit to become silent. Let the chatter of worry, the how, the when, the what if, fall away like static. In that stillness, you are not a person with a problem. You are an individualization of the divine presence. And that presence is the very essence of opulence, intelligence, and harmonious action. You listen not for a voice with words, but for a feeling, a knowing, an intuitive nudge. It may come as a sudden clarity about a conversation you need to have, a task you have neglected, or a creative idea that appears from nowhere. It may simply be a deep, unshakable peace concerning your finances, a peace that makes no logical sense given your bank statement. That peace is the evidence. From that center of peace, your action in the world is transformed. You go to your job not as a slave to a paycheck, but as a vessel for that intelligence to express itself. You engage with clients not from desperation, but from a fullness that seeks to share value. You make decisions not from fear of loss, but from a conviction of underlying support. You are no longer a beggar at the universe's door. You are a conscious conductor of its limitless energy. The forms will change. Old channels of income may dry up, not as punishment, but because they were misaligned with your new consciousness. New avenues will appear, a chance meeting, an unexpected offer, an idea that finds immediate resonance. These are the natural effects, the furniture rearranging itself effortlessly as the fresh air flows in. Resist the temptation to monitor the effects. This is the great discipline. Do not sit in silence and then jump up to check your stock prices, measuring the success of your meditation by a daily fluctuation. That is to look back at the furniture. You must trust the air. You must know, with a conviction deeper than intellectual understanding, that by abiding in the consciousness of the source, you are fulfilling the only law that governs supply. The right form will manifest at the right time, in the right way, often in a manner you could not have engineered with 1,000 business plans. Your only work is to maintain that inner connection, to return to that window moment by moment, especially when the outer picture seems to contradict it. That contradiction is the old furniture, the illusion of lack. Your steady gaze upon the infinite sky is what dissolves it. This is the end of seeking. It is the beginning of knowing. And in that knowing, you are already wealthy beyond any figure, for you have touched the substance from which all figures are formed. This declaration is not an affirmation in the way the world understands it. The world's affirmations are often desperate repetitions of a desired effect, chanted like a plea to a universe perceived as separate and withholding. You say, "I am wealthy," while staring at an empty bank statement. And the chasm between the words and the perceived reality creates a dissonance that undermines the very power you seek to harness. A living truth is something entirely different. It is not a statement about a condition you wish to see. It is the conscious embodiment of a spiritual fact that is eternally true, regardless of circumstance. It is speaking from the mountain top of your true identity, not from the valley of your human situation. You are not a mortal being trying to become prosperous. In your spiritual being, you are already the very expression of the infinite source, which knows no limitation, no lack, no delay. The living truth you declare is this: I am the place where the infinite outpouring of spirit manifests as harmonious form and abundant supply. You say this not to change God, but to change your own awareness of what God is doing right here, right now, as you. The power of this is in the feeling, tone, the knowing. That must accompany the words. It is the difference between reading a recipe for a feast and actually tasting the food. Your daily life provides the perfect workshop for this. Consider a moment of interaction, perhaps a sales call or a negotiation for your services. The old way, born of begging prayer, is to approach it with a hidden agenda. Please, let them say yes. I need this commission to pay my rent. That neediness, that fear, vibrates through your voice and is felt by the other. It pushes the very thing you desire away from you, for you are operating from a consciousness of lack. Now, instead, you prepare by sitting in the silence we spoke of. You become still. From that stillness, you declare the living truth. I am the conscious vehicle through which divine intelligence operates, creating a mutually beneficial agreement. You do not say this to manifest a specific contract. You say this to align yourself with the principle of harmony and right action. You then enter the conversation not as a supplicant, but as a clear, poised, and unattached presence. You listen from that inner stillness. You speak from an inner authority that has nothing to do with ego. The outcome is now in the hands of a law greater than your personal manipulation. You may close the deal, or you may not. But if you do not, a profound peace remains, and knowing that this was not the harmonious form for now, and that what is right and necessary will come from another direction, unimpeded. This practice turns every transaction of life into sacred commerce. Paying a bill becomes a declaration. I am the joyful activity of substance circulating from its infinite source through me to bless and be blessed. You are not parting with limited funds. You are participating in the infinite flow. Writing a proposal becomes not a gamble for approval, but a declaration. I am the transparency through which creative inspiration takes perfect form to meet a specific need. The anxiety of waiting for a response falls away. Because you have already fulfilled your purpose, you have been the vehicle for the idea. The acceptance is merely an outer confirmation of an inner reality already established. The until in this principle is critical. You declare it until your conscious awareness shifts. You declare it until you no longer feel like a separate entity trying to believe something, but until you feel yourself to be the very thing declared. You declare it when you open your eyes in the morning, and the old thought of lack tries to greet you. You declare it when you see a symbol of wealth that once triggered envy, and now you see only the same infinite substance taking another form. You declare it when the mail brings an unexpected bill, and instead of panic, you feel the unshakable calm of the provider within. You are not convincing the universe of anything. You are convincing yourself of what the universe has always been. You are sanding away the hardened layers of human belief, belief in struggle, belief in scarcity, belief in mortal power, to reveal the finished masterpiece of spiritual identity that was there all along. The $1 million manifestation is not the goal. It is the inevitable minor side effect. The goal is the realization of yourself as one with the source, and from that citadel of truth. No appearance of lack can endure, for you are no longer giving it the consciousness that makes it appear real. You are speaking the word, the living truth from within the kingdom, and the outer world, in time and in its own way, must come into conformity. But here is where you will face your greatest temptation, the siren call of the personal will. You have heard the principle, abide within. Declare the truth, let the outer form appear. And immediately the human mind, so accustomed to being the door, interjects with a frantic question. Yes, but what must I do? It will craft a plan, set a goal, and marshal all its force to achieve it, believing this activity is spiritual work. This is the subtle trap. It is the attempt to imbue your personal ambition with divine sanction, to ask God to bless your plan for prosperity. This is not surrender to a spiritual power. It is the co-opting of spiritual language for a human endeavor. True power lies in the relinquishment of this very will, not as apathy, but as the highest form of intelligent action, making way for the divine impulse to act through you. Your will is limited to your past experience, your fears, and your calculations. The divine impulse operates from infinite intelligence and knows a perfect path you cannot conceive. Consider the artist before a blank canvas. If he approaches it with a rigid, detailed blueprint in mind, determined to force his exact vision onto the cloth, the result may be technically proficient, but it will lack life, spontaneity, and that mysterious quality we call inspiration. True artistry begins when he stills himself, becomes receptive, and allows the vision to emerge from the silence within. He then becomes the instrument through which the painting paints itself. His skill is not in forcing, but in following. His will is not in commanding the brush, but in getting his own anxious ideas out of the way so the brush can be guided by a deeper knowing. Your financial life is that canvas. Your personal will is that rigid blueprint born of yesterday's limitations. The divine impulse is the inspired vision. Your job is not to laboriously paint by number, but to become quiet enough to perceive the guidance and then, with perfect trust, follow its lead. You will know the difference in your daily activities. The action born of personal will is fraught with strain. You grind through a task because you feel you should, because the plan demands it. There is a heaviness to it, a resentment, an underlying fear that if you stop, everything will collapse. you are pushing the river. Conversely, action born of surrendered receptivity has a feeling of flow. It is the idea that comes to you in the shower, not as a burdensome to do, but as an inspired, I could do this. It is the sudden intuition to call a person you haven't spoken to in years. It is the unexplained urge to decline a certain contract that looks good on paper, but feels wrong in your spirit. It is the effortless focus that finds you when you work on a project, losing track of time because you are in alignment with the activity itself, not its potential reward. This is the divine impulse expressing itself as your intelligence, your creativity, your right action. The practice, then, is a constant vigilance and a gentle releasing. You sit in the morning silence. You declare your living truth. And then, as you move into your day, you listen. You perform the obvious duties before you with full attention, but you hold your agenda lightly. When you feel the familiar pang of anxiety, I must make this happen, you recognize it as the personal will surfacing. You do not fight it. You simply acknowledge it and inwardly say, I release this tension. I am receptive and responsive to the right idea, the right action, in this moment. You become a discerning observer of your own impulses. The impulse born of fear is frantic, pushy, and seeks a specific, immediate outcome. The impulse born of spirit is calm, clear, and often feels like the next natural, intelligent step without the weight of the entire future resting upon it. This is how the invisible becomes visible. You are not building a fortune brick by heavy brick through sheer force of character. You are following a golden thread that is being unfurled from within. One step reveals itself, then the next. A door closes not as a failure, but because the thread is leading you away from a path that would ultimately derail you. A new connection is made effortlessly. An opportunity arises that solves 3 problems you hadn't even voiced. This is the orchestration of a higher intelligence using you, your circumstances, and your readiness as its instruments. Your abandonment of human will is not becoming a passive spectator in your life. It is the ultimate act of empowerment, for it aligns you with the only creative power there is. You trade the exhausting, limited power of the swimmer fighting the current for the infinite, effortless power of the current itself, now carrying you toward its own grand destination. Your hands are active, but the force moving them is not your own small sweat and strain. It is the grace of a wisdom that knows the end from the beginning and is perpetually manifesting it through you. When you cease your interference and allow, now we arrive at the great reversal, the pivot upon which your entire experience of reality turns. You have been trained since birth to live life as a series of reactions to the visible world. A bill arrives, and you react with anxiety, scrambling to meet it. The market shifts, and you react with fear or greed. You see another's success and react with envy, interpreting it as evidence of your own lack. This is the world of effect. It is a world where you are perpetually at the mercy of what has already been formed, a prisoner in a cage of your own perceptions. But I tell you, The visible world is not cause, it is always and only effect. It is the shadow. To focus your power, your thought, your emotional energy on the shadow is the very definition of powerlessness. It is to try to rearrange the images on a movie screen by touching the screen itself, rather than accessing the projector in the booth. Your life's projector is not in the circumstances, it is in the realm of spiritual consciousness, the realm of cause. Think of a master potter. Before him sits a finished vase, fired and glazed. That is the world of effect, the visible, tangible result. A novice, seeing only the vase, might try to change its shape by pushing on the hardened clay, succeeding only in breaking it. The master knows the vase was shaped in the soft, pliable moment on the wheel long before the kiln. His attention goes not to the fixed form, but to the creative intelligence and the yielding substance from which all new forms emerge. Your financial situation, your relationships, your health, these are the fired vases of your past consciousness. To obsess over them, to fight with them, to beg them to change, is the act of the novice. The master in you must turn away from the hardened form and return to the wheel of your present awareness, where the substance of your life is still soft, still receptive to the impress of a new idea from the divine. In your daily walk, this means a radical shift in where you place your faith and your mental attention. When lack appears in any form, you must train yourself to see it not as a truth to be negotiated with, but as an old projection, a shadow cast by a past state of consciousness. Your work is not with the shadow. Your work is to turn on the light in the projector room. The appearance of a debt is not your reality. It is the echo of an old belief in separation from supply. So you do not pour all your energy into fretting over the debt. You turn within to the cause. You go back to the wheel. You sit in the silence and know the truth of infinite, ever-present substance. You declare the living reality of your oneness with the source. You feel the flow. You are working not on the debt, but on the consciousness that could experience debt. As that consciousness shifts, as the light changes, the shadow must change. The debt may be paid from an unexpected source, or it may dissolve through a forgiveness or an unexpected solution you could not have engineered. The form of the adjustment is irrelevant to the principle. The principle is that you changed the cause and the effect was compelled to conform. This is the secret behind all lasting demonstration. It is never a matter of manipulating effects. It is always a matter of correcting consciousness at the level of cause. You are not a fortune teller trying to predict what will appear on the screen. You are the operator of the projector, deciding what reel to run. When you witness conflict, you do not jump into the fray to fix all the personalities. You turn within to the consciousness of divine harmony and peace, knowing that as you embody that cause, it will manifest as a new harmony in the visible relationships. When you face a business problem, you cease the frantic mental churning for a solution in the outer world of effect. You become still, acknowledge the one divine intelligence, as the only true problem solver and become receptive to its solution unfolding as your own intuition or as a new arrangement of circumstances. You are no longer at war with your world. You are the quiet, confident cause of its transformation from within. This understanding liberates you from the tyranny of the visible. The numbers in your bank statement, the opinions of others, the so-called market realities, these lose their hypnotic power to define your reality. They are seen for what they are, temporary pictures, subject to change the moment a higher law is applied. You walk through the world of effect with a kind of holy indifference, not because you do not care, but because you care so deeply for the truth that you refuse to worship the illusion. Your passion, your focus, your fidelity are given entirely to the cause, to maintaining that inner alignment, that conscious union with spirit. From that fortress of cause, you watch the world of effects rearrange itself with a precision and a grace that will forever annihilate your faith in mere human effort. You stop being a consumer of reality and become its conscious creator, not by molding clay with your hands, but by holding the unshakable knowing in your heart that the only substance is spirit, and it is forever shaping itself into perfect form through your acknowledged awareness of it. The struggle ends here at the source. The flow begins here at the cause. And from this point forward, nothing can appear in your world that does not first pass through the loving filter of this truth. This is the sacred transition from the life of a seeker to the life of a beholder, from one who chases supply to one who realizes they can never be separate from its source. To seek is to affirm a distance between you and the object of your desire. It is to stand at the shore, looking longingly at the boundless ocean, praying for a cup of water. To embody is to understand with every fiber of your being that you are not on the shore, you are in the ocean. The very substance of the water is your substance. You do not need to fetch. You need only to allow, to let the tides of infinite spirit circulate as your own life, your own intelligence, your own supply. The millionaire is not someone who has acquired a pile of money. It is someone who has uncovered the truth that they are heir to the entire treasury of the universe, and who then lets that truth express in tangible form. The form is incidental. The being is everything. Your entire day can now become a continuous practice of this embodiment, moving from theory into a felt, living reality. Begin with the most mundane acts. You wake up. Instead of the mental inventory of what you must get today, approval, money, solutions, you pause. You feel your own existence. In that feeling, you consciously acknowledge this awareness that I am, this very sense of being, is not poor. It is the living presence of the infinite I am. All that the I am is, I am here and now. You are not saying this to get something later. You are saying it to realize what you already are in this moment. You then move through your morning ritual, the shower, the coffee, the dressing, not as a weary preparer for a battle of lack, but as a conscious expression of the I am moving in harmony with itself. The warmth of the water, the richness of the coffee, the fit of the clothes, these are not just sensations. They are the infinite expressing as form for your present experience. You are already in the feast. You are not a beggar waiting for the gates to open. Now you go into the world of action. You have a job, a business, a task. The old consciousness saw this as the mechanism for extraction. Time traded for money, effort traded for security. The new consciousness knows it as a channel for expression. You are not there to get supply from the world. You are there to let the supply that you are flow into the world as value, as creativity, as intelligent action. A customer interacts with you. See them not as a source of your livelihood, but as another individualization of the same I am. And your interaction is an opportunity for that one life to bless itself through both of you. Your value is not determined by their transaction. Your value is the inherent, undeniable fact of your spiritual being. From that place of fullness, your service is richer, your ideas are clearer, your presence is more attractive. People are not drawn to beggars. They are drawn to royalty, to those who carry an inner knowing of their own worth. When a challenge arises, a missed target, a rejected pitch, an unforeseen expense, the embodiment is tested. The old seeker would collapse into fear, seeing the event as proof of impending lack. The one who embodies supply turns within, not in panic, but in reaffirmation. You look at the problem and you silently know, this appearance is a shadow. It cannot touch the substance of what I am. I am the substance itself. Therefore, I am not in need. I am the provision. You do not deny the appearance. You deny its power and its origin. You attribute all power and origin to the one cause within you. From that centered calm, the right action or non-action will present itself, often in a way that solves not just the immediate issue, but improves the entire structure. This is the practical magic of embodiment. You are not patching holes in a leaking boat. You are realizing you are the ocean, and the concept of a boat becomes irrelevant. This journey inward to the realization of your true self is the only journey. Everything else is scenery passing by the train window. The scenery changes, sometimes valleys, sometimes mountains, sometimes bustling cities, but you, the passenger, the aware one, remain constant. Your goal is to become so identified with the passenger, with the pure awareness, that you lose all anxiety about the scenery. You know the train is headed for its perfect destination. The scenery of wealth, of harmonious relationships, of health, these are natural landscapes along the route of a consciousness that knows its own divine identity. To seek the scenery is to miss the point of the journey. To embody the passenger is to enjoy every view without clinging to any. Knowing better ones always unfold when you are rooted in the joy of the ride itself. You cease to think, I need to become a person who has $1 million. You begin to know, I am the conscious awareness through which the infinite expresses itself. And $1 million is one utterly insignificant possible form that expression could take. Should it serve the harmonious whole, your peace, your power, Your poise no longer depend on the form. They depend on your unbroken remembrance of who and what you are right now, in the midst of whatever is appearing. From that remembrance, all things are not only possible, they are, in a profound sense, already present, waiting only for your conscious acceptance to step into visibility. Let this be the final and most liberating key. The direction of all genuine creation is from the invisible to the visible, from the formless substance of your consciousness to the formed experience of your world. The world has taught you to build from the outside in. You gather bricks of money, status, and possessions, stacking them precariously into a structure you call a life, hoping the inner feeling of security and worth will follow. It is a heartbreaking, endless labor, for the winds of circumstance can topple such a pile in an instant. The spiritual law operates in the opposite, an unfailing direction. You do not build a life. You establish a truth in the inner, silent realm of being, and a life crystallizes around that truth as surely as frost forms on a window pane from the invisible conditions of cold and moisture. Your inner knowing is the mold. The outer world is the metal poured into it, taking its exact shape. When you worry from the outside, you are trying to carve the hardened metal. When you work from the inside, you are designing the mold. See this in the simplest of daily examples. You have an important meeting. The outside, in approach, is to fret over your appearance, rehearse your lines, anticipate objections, and attempt to control every variable in the room. You are trying to assemble the event from the outside, and your energy is one of tension and control. The inside-out approach is entirely different. You prepare by going within. You settle into the silence, connecting with the truth that there is only one mind, one intelligence, operating in that room, in you and in all present. You know yourself as a transparency for that intelligence. You release any specific, rigid outcome. You establish the inner mold of peace, clarity, and non-attachment. Then you walk into the meeting. From that inner establishment, your words are spontaneously appropriate. Your listening is intuitive. You are responsive, not reactive. The meeting unfolds from the quality of consciousness you brought into it, not from the script you prepared. The outcome will be the perfect form for that mold. It may be the deal you hoped for, or it may be a better direction you hadn't conceived. You are at peace because you worked from cause, not effect. Apply this to your relationship with money itself. The outside, in perspective, sees a bank statement and allows that number to dictate your inner state, your confidence, your joy, your sense of possibility. It is a life lived in reaction, a roller coaster ride on the graphs of the market. The inside, out practice demands you reverse this flow. You must first establish the inner state, independent of the outer number. You sit and you consciously dwell in the feeling, tone of abundance. You recall that infinite substance is your source, and you let the feeling of security, of boundless support, of grateful receipt wash over you. You do this when the statement is high, and more importantly, you do this when the statement is low. You are forging the inner mold of sufficiency. From that established consciousness, you then take action. Your financial decisions, where to spend, where to save, where to invest, come from a place of wisdom and guided intuition, not from panic or greed. You may feel led to give generously when logic screams to hoard, because you are acting from the inner truth of flow, not the outer appearance of lack. The outer numbers will, over time, have no choice but to conform to this inner reality, because you are consistently acting as if the truth you know inwardly is the only reality that matters. You are living from the cause, and the effects must follow. This principle turns every moment into a creative act. You are not a victim of a chaotic world. You are a conscious architect, but your blueprint is your state of awareness. A conflict at home is not solved by arguing over the surface problem, the effect. It is resolved by withdrawing within, even mid-argument, to re-establish the inner mold of love, forgiveness, and oneness. You then speak and act from that re-established consciousness, and the outer form of the conflict dissolves, not because you won a point, but because you changed the substance from which the situation was formed. Your health, your relationships, your finances, they are not separate domains to be managed. They are all expressions of the one inner mold, which is your predominant state of consciousness. A fearful mind will manifest challenges in all three. A mind established in the truth of spiritual oneness and infinite support will manifest harmony in forms appropriate to each. Therefore, your entire spiritual practice is this inside-out alignment. Meditation is not an escape from the world. It is the profound act of returning to the workshop to craft the mold. Your declarations of truth are not wishful thinking. They are the precise specifications you are etching into that mold. Your surrender of personal will is the act of allowing the perfect, molten substance of spirit to fill it without your clumsy interference. And your daily life is the cooling, hardening, and unveiling of the creation. You begin to watch your own life with a sense of awe, not at your own personal power, but at the flawless law that is always in operation. You see a challenge not as a threat, but as a signal that your inner mold has a flaw, a lingering belief in separation, a hidden fear, an unsurrendered will. You return to the workshop. You correct the consciousness. You know with utter certainty that the outer picture has already changed in that unseen realm, and its visible appearance is only a matter of time and grace. This is the end of struggle. This is the beginning of conscious co-creation, where you are never again building from the shifting sands of circumstance, but from the unshakable rock of your own crysted awareness. There is a great and terrible misunderstanding in the hearts of those who seek the light. You believe that to be spiritual is to share your journey, to confess your inner experiences, and to lay bare the sacred milestones of your path for all to see. This is not wisdom. It is the very temptation that would keep you from the summit. The journey inward is a solitary one, and the treasures you uncover are not for the marketplace of common opinion. To speak of them is to scatter your power, to give what is holy to that which cannot yet comprehend it. There is a sacred silence that must be maintained if the inner communion is to remain unbroken and your awareness is to deepen. What then must remain veiled? What are the very signs of your awakening that you must learn to guard as the most precious of secrets? In the moments to follow, we will uncover these 5 sacred trusts. To know them is to protect the living presence within you and to ensure your journey proceeds without interference from a world still sleeping. Let us begin with the first and perhaps most foundational trust, the sanctity of your direct inner experiences. You have, in a moment of profound silence, felt a presence that is not of this world. It may have come as a wave of unconditional love that dissolved a lifelong fear, or as a sudden, luminous knowing that answered a question you had not even uttered aloud. It was a moment of pure grace, a private audience with the divine, and the impulse to run and share this glory with another can be overwhelming. You must resist this impulse. Why must such a beautiful experience be guarded? Because the moment you give it words, you inevitably give it form. You reduce the formless to a story, and that story is now bound by the limitations of human language and the listener's capacity to understand. The experience itself was beyond concept. It was a direct infusion of spirit into your consciousness. But the story you tell becomes a mere concept about spirituality, and concepts can be debated, analyzed, diluted, and even dismissed. You offer a diamond, and it is met with the language of common stone. Consider a simple analogy from daily life. You have a dream of such vivid beauty and personal significance that it moves you to tears upon waking. The symbols, the emotions, the landscape, it all feels perfectly orchestrated for your soul alone. Eager to share its magic, you describe it in detail to a friend. But as you fumble for words, you notice their eyes glaze over slightly. They nod politely, but they cannot enter the dream with you. They cannot feel its texture or comprehend its secret language. In the act of sharing, something of the dream's pristine power is lost, even for you. The experience has been translated into a mundane anecdote. How much more true is this for an encounter with the very source of your being? This guarding is not about secrecy or elitism. It is about spiritual physics. When a seed is planted in the earth, it is kept in the dark, silent soil. It is not dug up each day to be examined and shown to passers-by. To do so would ensure it never takes root, never sprouts, and never fulfills its purpose. Your inner experiences are precisely such seeds. They are planted in the fertile ground of your soul by a hand not your own. Their purpose is to germinate in secret, to send roots deep into your character, and to eventually break the surface as a transformed life, as spontaneous wisdom, as an unshakable peace. When you immediately speak of them, you are digging up the seed. You are exposing a sacred, hidden process to the harsh air of external opinion. Think of the individual who has a profound glimpse of oneness during meditation, a state where the sense of a separate I simply vanishes. and all that remains is a boundless, loving awareness. If they were to speak of this at the office the next day, what language could they possibly use? The words would inevitably be, "I had an experience where I felt at one with everything." But the entire point of the experience was the yes absence of the I. The telling of it immediately re-establishes the very separation the experience transcended. The listener, bound by their own sense of self, will likely interpret it through their own framework. "Oh, you had a very relaxing meditation," or worse, they may view it as a sign of eccentricity. The vibration of the truth is lowered to meet the capacity of the audience, and in that lowering, the one who received the experience begins to doubt its veracity. This is the great protection. By holding these experiences in the silent sanctuary of your heart, you allow them to work on you. They are not trophies to be displayed. They are catalytic fires meant to burn away the dross of your personal sense of self. Each time you are granted such a grace, it is an invitation to go deeper, to abide in that state more permanently. But if you speak of it, the energy that was meant for that deeper immersion is instead expended outwardly. The thrill of the story replaces the substance of the transformation. The world, still operating on the level of duality, of good and bad, success and failure, me and you, will inevitably try to categorize your experience to fit it into a box. It cannot be put in a box. And in the attempt, the fragile, nascent awareness within you can be harmed. Therefore, you learn to walk with this secret. You carry it as a hidden flame that warms you from within. You will find that its light begins to inform your actions without you having to proclaim it. Your reactions in a moment of conflict may become more compassionate, not because you are trying to be spiritual, but because the love you encountered in silence is now expressing itself through you. Your decisions may carry a deeper, more unshakable certainty, not because you are quoting scripture, but because you are abiding in a knowing that was given to you in a moment of wordless communion. The fruit of the experience will be evident in the changed quality of your life, not in the stories you tell about your spiritual accomplishments. The world does not need to hear your testimony. It needs to see the evidence of your peace, a peace that can only be cultivated in the quiet, protected places within. This sacred protection extends naturally from the inner experience to the very methods that foster its arrival, the specifics of your spiritual practices. You have been guided to a certain form of meditation, a unique rhythm of prayer, or a personal ritual that opens the door to the infinite. This practice feels like a private conversation with the divine, a coded language known only to your soul and God. The temptation, however, is to believe that by sharing the blueprint of this conversation, you might help another find their own door. But this is to misunderstand the living, breathing nature of true spiritual practice. Your path is not a formula to be replicated. It is a living organism that has grown in the specific soil of your own consciousness. To speak of the specifics is to invite the world to judge, compare, and ultimately profane what is holy. Imagine you have discovered that walking in the forest at dawn, in complete silence, attunes you to a profound sense of guidance. The specific path, the quality of the light through the trees, the sound of a particular stream. These are not incidental. They are part of the alchemy. Now, if you share this with a friend, they may respond with, "I tried that, but it was cold and I didn't feel anything," or, "I prefer a vigorous run in the evening." In that moment, your lived communion is reduced to a technique being evaluated on a scale of personal preference. The world, operating through the lens of duality, will immediately categorize it effective or ineffective, good or bad, strange or acceptable. This external judgment, even if well-intentioned, creates a subtle seed of doubt. The next time you walk that path, a voice may whisper, "Is this really working? Am I just imagining this?" The mirror of the world has been held up to your practice, and it's pristine. Subjective authority is compromised. Your practice is a living covenant, a dynamic agreement between the individual and the infinite. It is not a static set of instructions. The moment it is codified into words and given to another, it becomes a dead letter. It loses the very life that made it effective, which was its personal, revealed nature. Think of a master violinist. They can teach a student the scales, the finger positions, the theory of music. But they cannot give the student the intimate, wordless relationship they have with their own instrument. The unique pressure of the bow, the slight imperfections in the wood that create its singular voice, the way a specific piece resonates in their very bones. That relationship is the practice. It is the secret. To speak of it is to try to describe a color to someone who has never seen. Consider the daily life of an individual who has found that reciting a certain passage from a sacred text upon waking sets the tone for their entire day. This is not a mere recitation. It is a tuning of the instrument of consciousness. The words are a vehicle for a specific frequency of grace. If they proclaim this practice to their spiritual community, several things occur. First, others may adopt it as a rigid rule. Should, thereby stripping it of its spontaneous, heartfelt quality. Second, they may modify it, mix it with other practices, and then report back on their results, creating a marketplace of spiritual techniques where your sacred covenant is now a commodity being bartered. The focus shifts from the inner transformation to the outer form, from the silent reception of grace to the noisy comparison of methodologies. This is why the most profound teachings have always emphasized the secret place, the inner room where you shut the door. The practice performed in that secrecy is protected. It builds a cumulative power because its energy is never leaked through discussion. It is like a tree drawing water from a deep, hidden aquifer. No one sees the source, but everyone sees the strength and the fruit. If you constantly tell people where your roots are drinking, you invite them to come and dig around your foundation to test the water, to question its purity. The tree may continue to grow, but its growth is now hampered by the interference at its roots. Let your practice be so deeply internalized that it becomes invisible even to you as a separate activity. It should become as natural and unremarkable as breathing. You do not announce to your household, "I am now going to engage in the process of respiration." You simply breathe. So it must be with your communion. The specifics are the scaffolding necessary for a time, but the less you speak of the scaffolding, the more people will see the building that is being erected, a life of increasing stability, wisdom, and love. They will see the effect and may be drawn to their own inner search, but they will not be able to pin your light to a specific technique or time. Your practice remains a protected, living stream, and you its silent, grateful guardian. Just as the specifics of your practice must be guarded, so too must the profound and personal revelations that arise from that sacred silence. These are not intellectual understandings or theological concepts you have studied. They are living truths that have been unveiled to you from within, truths that now feel as much a part of you as your own breath. This is the third sacred trust, the depth of your personal revelations. When a flash of insight dissolves a lifelong confusion, or a new principle for living is written upon your heart, the joy can feel uncontainable. You wish to stand on the rooftop and proclaim the mystery that has been solved. Yet, this is the precise moment for the most profound spiritual discretion. A revelation is a delicate and living thing. It is given to you, for you, at a specific point in your unfoldment. Its purpose is to reorganize your own consciousness, to shatter a personal limitation, to guide your next step. It is custom made for your soul's current curriculum. To offer this raw, undigested truth to another is like giving a powerful, specific medicine intended for one patient to everyone you meet. At best, it will be inert. At worst, it will cause a reaction, for their system is not prepared for it. The revelation that freed you from the chains of resentment, for instance, will be heard as an abstract platitude by someone still tightly gripping their own grievance. They cannot hear the music you hear. They can only see the notes on the page and find them ordinary. Consider a simple, daily life example. You have struggled for years with a pattern of financial anxiety, seeing money as a scarce resource to be hoarded. Then, in a moment of quiet grace, a knowing dawns. You see that your true currency is not paper, but the flow of divine ideas, of intelligence, love, and opportunity. This realization shifts your entire being. You feel a sense of abundance that has nothing to do with your bank balance. The fear vanishes. Now, imagine you immediately try to explain this to a colleague who is in the throes of their own financial panic, meticulously budgeting out of terror. You say, money is just an idea. Your supply is infinite from God. To you, this is a lived reality. To them, it may sound like spiritual bypassing, a denial of their very real struggle. They may feel judged, misunderstood, or worse. They may adopt the words as a superficial mantra without the underlying realization, using the language of abundance to mask a deep, seated fear. thereby delaying their own authentic healing. When you speak a revelation prematurely, you externalize an internal process. The energy that was meant for the deep integration of that truth is diverted into the effort of explaining and defending it. The revelation, which was a living seed of transformation, becomes a static position you must now uphold. You have moved from being a living demonstration of the truth to being a salesman for a concept. This creates a subtle division within you and without. People will now relate to the concept you profess, not to the silent truth you are embodying. They will argue with the words, while the actual proof, your newfound peace and freedom, goes unnoticed because you are now in the way, standing behind the loud banner of your own proclamation. There is a deeper, more mystical reason for this silence. A true revelation is a direct impartation from the infinite to the individual. It is a holy covenant. To speak of it casually is to break the covenant, to take what was given in the secret place and throw it into the public square. The vibratory rate of that truth is so high that the lower vibrations of the unawakened world cannot hold it and will, by a law of nature, seek to shatter it. This is not a malicious act. It is a simple law of physics. Light exposes shadow, and shadow recoils. You will find that when you share a deep revelation, it is often met with skepticism, debate, or a blank stare that cannot receive it. This reaction is not a reflection of the truth's validity, but a demonstration that the container you are offering it to is not yet prepared. The rejection you feel can then create a wound around the revelation itself, making you doubt the very grace that sets you free. Therefore, you must let these revelations do their silent work. Let them cook within you. Let them become the very marrow of your bones and the lens of your perception. The revelation about the nature of supply, when kept sacred, will not manifest as a slogan you repeat, but as a calm, creative confidence in your work. The revelation about the illusion of resentment will not be a lecture you give, but as a newfound capacity to listen without judgment. The truth, when embodied, speaks for itself in a language beyond words. It communicates through the quality of your presence, the kindness in your eye, the unshakable peace in the midst of a storm. People will be drawn to this light and will ask, not for your philosophy, but for the secret of your peace. And even then, you will point them not to your personal revelation, but inward, toward their own capacity to receive, protecting the sanctity of what was given to you in the silent intimacy of your own awakening. Building upon the sanctity of your revelations, we come to the very heart of your private communion, the nature of your prayer. This is not the prayer of petition, of asking for things from a distant God, but the prayer of listening, of union, of becoming one with the divine presence. This fourth trust is perhaps the most intimate, for it concerns the unspoken dialogue that forms the core of your spiritual existence. To speak of the specific nature of this communion is to risk turning a living relationship into a subject for discussion, reducing the ineffable to mere anecdote. When you enter that sacred silence, you are engaging in an act of pure being. It is a state where the you that you normally present to the world dissolves, and what remains is a receptive openness, a vessel waiting to be filled. In this state, there are no words, no formal requests, only a profound sense of presence. Perhaps you experience it as a wave of peace that stills all mental chatter, or as a luminous emptiness that is paradoxically full, or as a direct knowing that requires no intermediary thought. This is your private audience with the infinite, and its texture, its flavor, its unique quality is meant for you alone. To attempt to describe this to another is like trying to describe the taste of a mango to someone who has only ever eaten bread. The experience is fundamentally incommunicable, and the attempt to communicate, it creates a separation from the experience itself. Consider the daily life of a musician who has a deeply personal, almost mystical connection to their instrument. When they play, they are not merely executing notes on a page, they are in a state of flow, a dialogue where the boundary between the player and the played upon blurs. The music pours through them. If this musician were to constantly stop and explain to an observer, "Now I am feeling the resonance in my chest," or "This passage is where I lose all sense of self," the magic would be shattered. The act of observation and description would break the very union they are describing. The same is true of your deepest prayer. The moment you step outside of the experience to formulate a story about it, you have left the Holy of Holies and are now standing in the outer court, talking about the furniture. This temptation is particularly subtle because it often masquerades as spiritual sharing. You may feel a desire to testify to the power of your practice, to describe the warmth, the light, or the profound silence you encounter. But this is a trap. You are taking a subjective, formless experience and giving it an objective form. You are creating a spiritual memory that is now frozen in time and language. The next time you approach your prayer, you may unconsciously be seeking to recapture that described experience, that specific feeling of warmth or light. Instead of entering the silence with an open, empty heart, you are bringing an expectation, a memory, a comparison. You are no longer meeting God in the present moment. You are seeking a past experience, and in doing so, you block the possibility of a new, perhaps even deeper, revelation. The world, operating on the level of form and action, has little frame of reference for this formless communion. If you speak of it, you will inevitably be misunderstood. Your account of a wordless union may be interpreted as a trance, a dissociation, or a simple lack of focus. Your description of a divine love that embraces you may be pathologized as a form of emotional dependency. The language you use to point toward the infinite will be taken literally by a mind that deals only in the finite. This creates a veil between you and others, a sense of spiritual isolation that is entirely unnecessary, for it was born from the mistake of trying to verbalize the wordless. Therefore, your prayer must remain the most guarded of secrets. Let it be the invisible source from which all your visible life flows. Let this communion be the sun around which your life orbits, unseen, but whose light and warmth animate everything you do. People should not know you as someone who prays deeply. They should know you as someone who is inexplicably calm in a crisis, spontaneously compassionate, or intuitively wise. The proof of your prayer is not in your description of it, but in the quality of your consciousness and the fruit of your actions. When your prayer is kept in the secret place, it retains its pure, transformative power. It works on you in the darkness, reshaping your fears into faith, your judgments into understanding, your separation into unity. It needs no publicity, for its effects are its only and its most powerful testimony. This silent, ongoing dialogue is the wellspring of your entire spiritual life, and to protect its sanctity is to ensure the stream remains pure, undiluted, and ever-flowing. The very act of guarding these sacred trusts, your experiences, your practices, your revelations, your prayer, naturally brings us to the fifth and perhaps most subtle temptation, the temptation to appear spiritually advanced. This is a snare that can entangle even the most sincere seeker, for it dresses itself in the robes of humility, while secretly seeking the approval and recognition of the world. It is the desire to have your spiritual progress acknowledged, to be seen as someone who has attained a certain height, to quietly separate yourself from those you perceive to be less awake. This is the ego's final, most clever gambit, using the language of spirituality to rebuild the very fortress of self that the entire journey is meant to dismantle. This temptation manifests not in grand pronouncements, but in 1,000 subtle inflections. It is the slight tone of spiritual authority when offering advice, the casual mention of your long hours in meditation, the unspoken satisfaction when someone remarks on your peacefulness, the subtle comparison of your own reactions to the unawakened, reactions of others. Each time you yield to this temptation, you are taking the invisible, formless substance of your inner growth and casting it into the visible world as a monument to your personal self. You are trading the living reality of God's grace for the dead currency of human admiration. Consider a simple, daily life example. You have been practicing patience, and in a moment of great frustration, you manage to remain calm where once you would have erupted. This is a genuine fruit of the Spirit. But then, later, you find yourself saying to a friend, "I just had to consciously breathe and center myself when that happened," with a subtle implication that you handled it better than others might have. In that moment, the pure, impersonal expression of patience has been co-opted by the personal I, the energy of the accomplishment, which should have been absorbed silently to fuel further growth, is instead spent on reinforcing your self-image as a patient person. The next time a test comes, you may find yourself performing patience for your own inner audience, rather than simply being patience itself. The living quality has been replaced by a staged one. This desire for recognition is a leak in the vessel of your consciousness. The power that is gathered in silence through your guarded practices and revelations is meant to be conserved for the next stage of your ascent. It is a precious and cumulative energy. When you spend it on crafting an image, you are dissipating that power. It is like carefully filling a reservoir only to puncture a hole in the dam so that passers-by can admire the flow. The reservoir never fills, and the energy meant for sustained power is wasted in a temporary display. The world's acknowledgement is a hollow substitute for the genuine confirmation that comes only from within as a quiet, wordless knowing that you are moving in alignment with a divine rhythm. Furthermore, to seek to appear advanced is to misunderstand the very nature of the path. True spirituality is a process of subtraction, not addition. It is the unlearning of the personal self, the stripping away of pretension, the dissolution of the need for any special identity, including a spiritual one. The moment you cling to the identity of being awake or advanced, you have created a new costume for the ego to wear. You have simply traded a worldly costume for a spiritual one, but the actor beneath remains the same. The goal is not to become a spiritually advanced person, but to discover that which is prior to personhood itself, the pure, anonymous I am that is one with all that is. Therefore, you must learn to walk in a holy anonymity. Let your growth be utterly invisible to the world, and more importantly, let it be invisible even to your own evaluating mind. When a moment of true grace manifests as wisdom or compassion, let it pass without your mental commentary claiming it as your own. Receive it, express it, and release it, as a window receives and transmits light without ever claiming to be the source of the sun. The greatest evidence of a profound inner life is not a reputation for holiness, but a natural, unself-conscious simplicity. It is the ability to be fully present without a label, to engage with the world without the constant, subtle agenda of managing your spiritual image. When you are free from the need to appear any particular way, you are finally free to be. And in that being, the light you have guarded so jealously in secret will shine forth of its own accord, not as a beacon pointing to you, but as a radiance that points all who see it back to the silent, sacred source within themselves. And so we arrive at the final, practical application of this sacred silence, the identity of your true spiritual companions. After learning to guard your experiences, your practices, your revelations, the nature of your prayer, and even the appearance of your own progress, a profound question naturally arises. With whom, then, can you share this journey? Is it a path of total isolation? The answer is no, but the discernment required is as subtle as it is vital. Your true spiritual companions are not necessarily those who speak the same language or profess the same beliefs, but those in whose presence your silence is understood, your growth is protected, and your inner flame is sheltered, not exposed. This is not a matter of judgment or elitism, but of vibrational resonance. Just as a specific tuning fork will only cause another of the same pitch to hum in sympathy, your innermost being will recognize its true companions through a silent, mutual recognition that requires no declaration. These relationships are not forged through the exchange of spiritual resumes or the comparing of experiences. They are discovered in the quiet spaces between words, in a shared understanding that transcends doctrine, in a gaze that communicates more than speech ever could. In their presence, you feel no compulsion to explain your practice or justify your revelations. You can simply be in your unfolding, and they in theirs, in a parallel journey that provides the comfort of companionship without the burden of explanation. Consider the contrast in daily life. You may have a colleague with whom you discuss philosophy or the latest spiritual book. The conversation is stimulating an exchange of concepts. Yet, you instinctively withhold the raw, personal truth of your last meditation, the specific guidance you received in a moment of despair. You sense, intuitively, that this information would become grist for the mill of intellectual discussion. Now, consider another individual. You may rarely speak of spiritual matters at all, but in their presence, during a simple walk or a shared silence, you feel a profound peace. You sense they are anchored in something deep and unshakable. Without a word being uttered on the subject, you know they are a fellow traveler. This knowing is the only credential that matters. To speak freely with those who are not true companions is to invite a subtle, often unintentional, form of spiritual sabotage. Imagine you have a friend who is deeply empathetic and caring, but whose consciousness is still rooted in the world of effect, of problems and solutions. You attempt to share a revelation you received about the illusory nature of a particular fear. Their response, born of love, is to immediately try to solve the problem of the fear. Have you tried this technique? What does your teacher say? Maybe you should see a therapist. Their well-intentioned questions pull you back into the very level of consciousness from which your revelation had freed you. The conversation meant to share a light instead becomes a reinforcement of the problem. The companion, however, would have simply listened, nodded with an understanding that goes beyond the problem itself, and perhaps held a space of silence that allowed your revelation to grow deeper roots within you. This principle of guarded companionship is the ultimate protection for the fragile ecosystem of your awakening. Every time you share a sacred truth with a consciousness that cannot yet hold it, you are not just risking misinterpretation, you are actively participating in the dissipation of its power. The energy goes out, meets a vibration that cannot match it, and is scattered. When you reserve that sharing for the true companion, the energy circulates, amplifies, and blesses both of you. It is the difference between shouting a secret into a busy street and whispering it in a soundproof room to one who already knows. Therefore, let your discernment in relationship be as sharp as your dedication to your inner practice. Learn to feel the quality of a presence. Does this person's attention make you feel more centered and at peace, or does it pull your energy outward into self-explanation and justification? Do you leave their presence feeling replenished and confirmed in your being, or subtly drained and misunderstood, this is not a judgment of their worth, but a recognition of your respective places on the path. Your journey is a holy pilgrimage, and you must be fiercely protective of who you allow to walk beside you in the inner sanctums. Not everyone deserves access to the building site of your soul. Some are meant to admire the finished structure from the street. Others are invited to witness the scaffolding, the dust, and the raw materials, because they are master builders themselves, engaged in the same sacred work. To recognize the difference is the wisdom that completes the circle of silence, ensuring that the treasures of your heart are shared only where they can be received as the sacred gifts they are.